Have you ever noticed the curious color of the magazines on the Automat Kalashnikova 74? If you look closely, these are orange. It's probably the rarest magazine color on the planet. Think about it. What sense does it make to paint your magazines orange? It's a color that completely ruins camouflage by being so flashy. Maybe you have some reasons in mind for this, like the color is meant to match the wood of the Automat Kalashnikova. But that sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? What's the point? Would an army invest millions of dollars in a polymer program just to make their soldiers look better? This isn't Germany in World War II, man. There are no Hugo Boss uniforms here. Another theory has to do with the magazines. If they're orange, they're harder to lose in the grass. And that makes a bit of sense. It would be really hard to lose your magazines in the grass if they're such a bright color. But does no soldier really drop their magazines on the ground when reloading? They're trained to keep them once they finish reloading, so this doesn't make sense. The reason for this color really isn't what you think, and only the most experienced truly know the origin of this color. So why did the Soviets and Russians paint their magazines orange? And why specifically orange and not another color like green or brown? In this video, we'll see the answer, so get comfortable and welcome to Guns Club. To learn the history of the orange magazines, we need to go back to the beginnings of the first assault rifle that was standardized in the Soviet Union, the Automat Kalashnikova 47. By 1955, the existence of the rifle would be revealed to the world. Its production had been going full steam ahead since 1951. It was an exceptional rifle and had a promising future. However, the Soviets would realize a serious problem. The Soviet Union had an army of almost 3 million men. And with the signing of the Warsaw Pact that same year, now they not only had to arm those 3 million, but they also had to provide weapons to the signatories of the treaty if they wanted to arm all those soldiers who numbered over 10 million. They had to extremely speed up and lower the cost of production. Likewise, in 57, the same Kalashnikov was given the task of optimizing the Automat Kalashnikova 47 for production. Emerging in 59, and after several years of research, the AKM, this rifle, was a kilogram lighter than its predecessor, Kalashnikov. He did an excellent job replacing complicated manufactured parts with stamped metal and laminated wood pieces that were easier to produce. But definitely, it wasn't just 3 years of simply changing everything to stamped metal. During those years, the emerging technology of polymers in weapons would be researched, and of course, how to apply it to the new rifle. During the development of the Automat Kalashnikova Modernizirovanny, a wide variety of polymers were experimented with to incorporate them into the weapon, thus making it lighter and reducing production costs. Even more, through trial and error, they discovered that Bakelite was what they were looking for. This supermaterial promised to change everything, as it was cheap and very durable. But what exactly was Bakelite? This was a polymer discovered in 1870. Since the 1920s, it was used to produce many electronic products in the United States: radios, telephones, combs, toys, among many other things. What made it special was that when it was hot, it was very malleable. After it dried, it hardened like a rock and couldn't be reshaped. Even if it was heated to high temperatures, in other words, it was thermoset, it was a polymer like no other, and the best part was that its price was relatively low. Bakelite was a boom in the Soviet Union. It lowered the production costs of many products, and you could see it in everything from ammunition boxes to radios. Yes, they used Bakelite. With the Automat Kalashnikova Modernizirovanny, they didn't need to invest a single cent or years of research to produce another specialized polymer, like other countries were doing at that time, such as Austria, West Germany, and the United States. In the early 60s, the Soviets tried to replace parts of the AKMs with Bakelite, like the handguard, the stock, the pistol grip, and also the dust cover. And as you can probably guess, the first polymer magazines for the Automat Kalashnikova Modernizirovanny were also made, making the final weapon much lighter and, of course, cheaper. These prototypes were tested in different climates, tundra and desert, with really unsatisfactory results in both heat and cold. Soviet Bakelite became brittle when the weapon was cooled or heated too much and then lightly struck. The Bakelite would break easily. These negative results caused Bakelite to take longer to be incorporated into rifles, making the Automat Kalashnikova Modernizирование a rather traditional weapon. As for materials, there were no polymers at all, and it had the classic stamped metal magazines. However, research to improve Bakelite continued throughout the 1960s. During the mid-60s, Bakelite was used in various prototypes. The rifles designed by Herman Korbab were the most notable. They were bullpup designs and used this special material to lighten much of the rifle's weight. In '68, projects focused on making the Automat Kalashnikova Modernizирование lighter continued and resulted in the creation of Bakelite parts that were highly resistant to temperature. This led to the typical orange magazines and pistol grips that we know today. In that same year, these Bakelite parts began to be used on the Automat Kalashnikova Modernizирование and the Ruchnoy Pulemyot Kalashnikova. They also began designing the A3 prototype, which in a few years would eventually become the Automat Kalashnikova 74. This rifle came standard with a pistol grip and Bakelite magazines. And with the Automat Kalashnikova 74, these iconic parts of the weapon were given their distinctive color. Whenever you think of an Automat Kalashnikova 74, you immediately think of the orange color of its magazines and its pistol grip. But what's the real reason for its color? Well, the reason was pretty simple. Do you remember I told you that Bakelite was thermosetting? Well, this caused some curious effects when you tried to paint it, if you tried to paint it cold. After a while, the paint would simply fall off, revealing its characteristic color. In fact, and if they added pigments during its manufacturing, it ended up having less durability than a piece of Bakelite without paint. So, if the Soviets wanted to use Bakelite in their rifles, they simply had to settle for the characteristic orange color of the polymer. This is something we can see in all Bakelite products. They all have different shades of orange. It was a wonderful material, but if you wanted to use it, you had to settle for its color, which interestingly turned out to be quite an elegant orange. Something curious about the Automat Kalashnikova 74 is that, in fact, the color of its Bakelite wasn't orange, but yellow. The first Bakelite magazines for the Automat Kalashnikova 74 were made with yellow Bakelite. But Bakelite has a peculiarity, and that's that it changes color as it ages. Depending on its composition, it can become darker or lighter over time. After a year, the first Soviet magazines changed from a yellow color to orange. Different mixtures of Bakelite were made, so Soviet Bakelite magazines have different shades. Nowadays, some are darker than others, each one having a unique shade. All of this makes each original Soviet magazine a very special piece. In the 80s, the Soviets managed to make more advanced and stable polymers that could be easily pigmented, making Bakelite obsolete. However, its characteristic color remains in the psyche of everyone who has seen an Automat Kalashnikova 74. If you like this video, you might be interested to know why bolt-action rifles are more accurate than semi-automatic ones. Thank you very much for watching this video, and goodbye.